Hello, everyone, and happy tea time. I am so excited to be back, and I am so looking forward to chatting with today's guest. Thank you so much for being patient with us as we made improvements to tea time so that we can make sure we are giving you the best show possible. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest. Joining us from Camas, Washington is Grant Byington.
Hey, Abigail, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
Cheers. Happy tea time.
Cheers.
You have your Montana cup?
I do. My sister sent me this for Christmas a couple of years ago, and I just love it.
Well, it is, I must say, perfect for today's tea time.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show. You come very, very highly recommended, as I've heard you are hilarious and have wonderful stories. So, not to put any pressure on you, but
Well, that's
come
that's
highly
that's
recommended.
that's a little bit of pressure. I wonder who you heard that from, but
Yeah,
but
no
I will do my best. Pretty
beautiful.
much anything embarrassing that I have to say happened 40 years ago, so I'm not that worried about it.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. And if anyone is new here watching the show, this is a show where we talk about people's favorite experiences with MCT, and we talk to friends of MCT to ask them what are their stories and where are they now and what are they up to. So I have a lot of questions for you.
Excellent. Excellent. Fire away. I will
Beautiful.
answer them to the best of my ability.
Perfect. That's all we ask for. And be hilarious and tell great stories.
I'll try.
Oh, I love it. Well, first of all, tell us your MCT story, please.
Wow. Well, I have to say, I've been thinking about this for, well, since you reached out to me, and my MCT story, I think, used to be unique, but is not so much anymore. And you're going to have to kind of check me on my dates here because you'd have to go into the archives to kind of get the most accurate information. But I think probably the closest I can say is that in 1972, maybe 1973, but I think 1972, I was walking through. My mom used to drop me off at the Washoe Theater in Anaconda, where I grew up, on Saturday afternoon to see a movie while she did the grocery shopping for the family. And one year she said, "We're going to do something different. I'm going to drop you off at the Catholic high school, Central High School, and you're going to see a play." And so I was in 1972. I was probably 9 years old at the time. In I go into the auditorium all by myself. I was kind of used to that by then, and I saw this show that was, there were people that I recognized in it, some kids that I recognized in it, some friends of mine, lifelong childhood friends. Mary Sue Daniels was in it, playing the Wicked Witch. Maureen Manning was in it, playing Dorothy. Addie Haugen, who was a girl that I had crush on from band, was playing the Cowardly Lion. And there were these two adults in the show, and I didn't know who they were. A guy named Rob Eamon was playing the Tin Man. Don't know who was playing Toto. Anyway, there I was, and I was just completely blown away by that. I had a little bit of a, I'm going to use air quotes. Oh, I'm on Zoom. I'm going to use air quotes here. A little bit of a career kind of touring around various parts of the country as a soloist for boys choirs. So I had a kind of a performing background. Anyway, saw this show and I thought, oh my God, this is just amazing. And then I discovered that they had only rehearsed it for a week. And then I discovered that, anybody could be in it. So that was it. It was like, sign me up. And then the next year, was the same older guy, kind of a chubby guy with a beard and a couple of dogs, and they were doing Pinocchio. And I auditioned for the show, and I did not get in. And I was a little bit crestfallen, and I was kind of walking away from that. And this nice older guy who was very friendly and very kind and really smart and clever, pulled me aside and said, "Hey, have you got a minute?" And, here I was, maybe 10 years old. And I said, "Yeah, sure. I got a minute." And he said, "We didn't cast you in the show, but I want you to know why." And I said, "Okay." He said, "We just don't have a costume big enough to fit you." Because I was pretty chubby at that point and pretty large kid in general. And I said, "Okay, well, thanks so much." But he said, "Hold on." He said, "But we could really use your help." And I said, "Like what?" And he said, "Well, we could really use your help with all of the other kids in the show. We could use your help on show day. We would love you to run the lights. We would love you to be an assistant director." And I said, "Well, when would I have to be here?" And he said, "Well, you would have to start right now. And you would have to be at every rehearsal. And you would have to be here for both of the shows." And I was touched and flattered and impressed and said, "Absolutely." And so there was that was Pinocchio, and I kind of was involved in high school plays and with the community theater in Anaconda for a long time. I did pretty much every show that they did after that. And then fast forward to 1980, and I was a music major at the University of Montana, and I was walking through the building there, going to my practice room, and I saw this sign for auditions for The Sound of Music, Missoula Children's Theater. And I thought, there is no way in hell that you are going to do The Sound of Music with 50 kids and 2 adults in a week. That's just absolutely no way in hell.
Yeah.
And I said, I have to check this out, right? So I went to the audition. The theater at that point, the children's theater at that point, was above the Good Food store on Main Street in Missoula. And I was a college freshman. I was 17 years old at the time. And I walked into the audition, and there was that guy. There was that guy with a beard, and he was smoking a pipe, and he was sitting in the back of the theater, and he was in the dark. And the person who was running the audition, Maida Kaplan, said, "So I see that you're from Anaconda, and that you were in Pinocchio, and that you were in, that you'd seen some of the shows that we've done there. Pied Piper, I think, was another one." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Were you in any of those shows?" And I said, "Well, I was too fat for a costume, but I ran the lights, and I did the donkey calls off stage for Pinocchio." And Jim Karen shouts from the back of the theater, "I remember you." and that was it. I auditioned for that show. I didn't get the part that I auditioned for. Willie Tilton did. And I did pretty much every show, including the children's shows, from that point on until 1990. So for the following 10 years, I was involved in some way, shape, or form in every show that they did.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an honor to hear your story and to get to talk to you.
Well, and like I said, when I started that long diatribe of a story, it was unique at the time. But I'm betting that pretty much everybody who's connected with MCT on the home staff I guess you're now calling it Missoula Community Theater. When I had your job, or part of your job, we called it the MCT Community Theater.
Yes.
I'll bet there's probably 60 or 70 people out there that have the exact same story. I was a kid. I was in a small town in Montana. I auditioned for a show, and now I'm a professional actor. And I attribute every job in my professional life and in what it is that I do for a living, and in my professional acting life, I attribute pretty much every job that I ever got to that afternoon in the Main Street Theater when Jim Karen said, "I remember you."
Wow.
Yeah. And then oh gosh, it was probably a year later. I was helping out at the theater, and Jim said, "What do you want?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I want a full-time job in the theater in Missoula." And I can't do that. He said, "But I can give you a job touring the Pacific Northwest." And I said, "I'll take it. And I'll wait for that job in Missoula." And he said, and then he said, "How old are you?" And I said, 18. And he said, "I don't think you should be a tour actor right now. You're a little bit too young." By that point though, what I was doing was filling in for tour actors who couldn't fulfill a week someplace or other. Because I knew all of the shows from having been in them in Missoula. And so I would go, out for a week at a time here and there. And then I did the first summer tour, which was 5 weeks long. And then I did a school tour, and then I did summer tours after that. And I did the first air tour in Alaska.
Oh,
Julie
wow.
Dunlap and I went to Alaska in a float plane, and we performed for 3 weeks in Alaska. And then I worked on the home staff for a long, long time. I started as the box office person, and then I became they called it production coordinator / publicist.
Okay.
And there were 5 or 6 of us on staff at the time.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
and that's it. But in 1990, I moved away and went back every once in a while to see a show, or if there was a tour show within my area, I would make sure that I saw it.
Yeah. Wow. What an incredible story. For the record, just so everyone watching knows, we don't say that to students anymore. We have costumes of all sizes for people.
Yeah.
So just for the record, um, we have all different costumes of all different.
That's a great addendum to the story. Yeah. Well, and when I toured, when I was a tour actor, one of the first things that I made sure was that we always had costumes in all sizes and we could accommodate all actors.
Yeah.
Except for the time that we did Bumbershoot in Seattle, and we were doing The Wizard of Oz, and we cast 2 elderly senior citizens as the Munchkin farmer and the Munchkin mayor that are usually hand puppets.
Oh.
And we put them in Munchkin costumes, and they were a little bit too small, I have to say. But
Oh,
they were adorable
oh, I'm
Munchkins.
sure.
But one of them forgot her lines and swore on stage.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah. That was a big important booking, because that was the first time that we were in Washington, and it was at this gigantic arts festival in the Seattle Center. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I have to tell you, when I said at our staff meeting that I was going to be interviewing you, everyone said, "Oh, we just love him." So everyone
Oh, God.
who knew you, which even if people weren't here when you were here with us on the home staff, people still of course know of you, but everyone said, "Oh," and Michael McGill, who is our executive director, um, he said, "Oh, Grant did well. He said you were the publicist, and he said whatever got thrown at you, you did."
Well, that was that. That was so. God bless Michael McGill. I love him to death. He was one of he and Don Kukla. Sorry, Don Alder is a local actor here in town that I'm doing The Odd Couple with here in a couple of weeks. Don Kukla and he were tour partners. They toured Johnny Appleseed at the same time that Deborah Brown and I toured Cinderella, which was a show that they actually wrote for me, because they knew that I was not a singer, and they wrote the day camp kind of around me, and I was the first one who did it. And then I trained Jeff Hall, who then became a tour actor and then became the tour director before Terry Elander did it.
Oh yeah. Oh, that is so great.
Yeah. See, I have all of these connections to all of these people in
Yeah.
most of my life. You know, I really do attribute it to that afternoon in Main Street.
Wow. So speaking of attributing your professional career, can you talk about where you headed after that?
Yeah. So, you know, I just came back from Missoula. I was in Missoula like yesterday afternoon, 2 afternoons ago, because I came home to Anaconda for my 40th and 41st high school reunion,
Oh, cool.
which was a trip because, you know, we didn't have it last year because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So the summertime in Missoula in the 80s, you know, there was nobody there. It was like you could. My friend Brian Sankey said you could put a cannon in the middle of Higgins Street and fire it, and you wouldn't hit anybody. And I was just amazed at all of the people that were there, you know, in the middle of
Yeah.
July in the summertime. But in the summertime, on staff, when you worked on staff, you either did the day camp and then, you know, you waited around for tour training, and there was this kind of lull in the summer. And so I started taking jobs away from Missoula and take like 3 months away. And one of those was with the Port Polson Players, which I understand you just did a show with.
Yes, we just finished on Sunday.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. That's great. I wish I could have seen it. I was in the area.
Yes.
As they say.
I'd love to have
But the other job that I took was teaching and directing at a summer camp in New Mexico. Brush Ranch Camp was the name of it. I made all kinds of contacts in New Mexico, and there was all sorts of staff members from all over the country that worked in New Mexico. And so I started to kind of broaden my horizons in the summertime. My life just sort of changed in the late 80s. Both of my parents passed away. And my grandmother, who lived in, we called it the Old Folks High Rise, which was Clark Fork Manor, which is just down Front Street from where the theater used to be. My grandmother was in Clark Fork Manor, and she passed away. And I was looking around, and it was 50 below outside, and 80 below in my apartment at 237 and a half East Front Street. Shout out to the plaza. And I looked around, and there was an inch of frost on the inside of my apartment window, and it was 50 below outside. And I thought, I don't have to live like this.
Yeah.
And so I started devising ways to leave Missoula. And what I decided to do was to go to Seattle to be an actor.
Okay.
And stopped in Portland to teach at the Young People's Theater Project, which was a theater company that Jeff Hall had started. And he had moved to Portland here. And I stopped to teach a couple of classes and auditioned for a show called Smoke on the Mountain at the Oregon Stage Company, and got cast. And the person who cast me ended up being my wife.
There you go.
And so I've stayed here and worked in Portland, in the Portland area. I'm in Camas, Washington, which is across the Columbia River from Portland.
Oh, okay.
And have worked pretty consistently in the theater ever since. And I work as I taught high school for 10 years. And then I got a job in a creative writing boutique agency. And from there, I got a job at Dell, writing and editing. And now I work for a company called NTT Data. But I do theater at night.
Yeah. Good for you. That's the dream, right?
Right. Well, I have an opportunity every once in a while to talk to high school kids.
Yeah.
And I often tell them, um, I did absolutely everything in the theater and in Missoula. I learned how to run the lights. I learned how to sew costumes in the costume shop. I learned how to run the soundboard. I learned how to score music. I learned how to accompany a show. I learned how to, acting is just a fraction of the kinds of careers that you can have in the theater. And I used to say there is no theater in the world that's going to turn you away if you show up and you say, all I want to do is help and learn. And that was the experience that I got at MCT, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think that you are providing that for, on a grand scale now, hundreds of thousands of people. And that's just really remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
and why I was happy to talk to you.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. And how important and special that kids get to hear that from you. That is a really important message.
Kids all over the world. Kids all over the world. I mean, it blew up. There were 5 tour teams when I was a tour actor. And we had the long tours were 35 weeks long. They were a school year long. And now it's amazing what you all have managed to do since 1990.
Yeah. So how you sort of touched on this, how have the roles that you played at MCT as a tour actor, as a publicist, as on stage, off stage, all across the board, how have those roles impacted your other jobs that you've had, that whether they're related to theater or not?
One of the pleasures of my particular position right now in the business world, I'm gonna, once again, here they are.
I know, that's the beauty of Zoom.
I get to interview people for jobs on my team. Every once in a while, when there's a vacancy on my team, I get to interview a person, and I always ask them if they have any experience in the theater. And here's the deal. I was just saying this to Brian Sankey just the other day. I said, I love talking to people who have experience in the theater because they are accustomed to working long hours. They're accustomed to working very hard and very smart. And there's always an opening night. So, I've said to hiring managers at my company and in other positions that I've had in the professional world outside of the theater, I've said, you know what? This person will give you 110% of their abilities. They will not settle for post their best work. They won't settle. And there is always an opening night. They will never miss a deadline. They will always be early. They will never be late. They won't come in with a whole bunch of excuses. They will just get the job done. That's what actors do. That's what theater makers, I guess we call them theater makers now. That's what theater makers do. They get the job done, and they don't do it at the expense of somebody else. They are absolutely 100% team motivated. They work together. They are collaborative. They aren't at all, I think there's a horrible stereotype about divas and about people who can only function as performers.
Yeah.
My understanding of those people, I've only met a few of them in the 40 plus years that I've been doing this, almost 50 now. Those people, if acting and performing and starring in things is the only thing that they can do, they just don't last very long. So, you know, the further the depth of experience that you have comes into play 100%. And I have never underestimated the value of a safety pin. I will say that. Yeah, there's a reason they're called safety pins, by the way. They make you safe.
Safety pins. That is beautifully, beautifully said. I love that. Speaking of safety pins, can you tell us one of your favorite memories or favorite stories from your time on the road as a tour actor, director?
Well, you know, I noticed this on the website when you're asking people to give you MCT memories. There's so many, you know, there's so many. There goes my little dog. Hey, Zig.
Oh, what a cutie.
Okay, so there's two really. One of them is funny and one of them is slightly obtuse. But and I don't know if this is still the case, but in Cinderella, the youngest cast members, the littlest guys, are pumpkins. They played pumpkins. And the show was unique in that we didn't travel with a sound system. So it wasn't a little ballet that the kids did or a little dance that the kids did, like in Pinocchio and in Snow White and in Cinderella and some of the other, in Wizard of Oz, some of the other shows that I did. They sang a little song called Pumpkin Pie. And they would kind of bob. And I would sing with them, and they would sing, and it was in the pumpkin patch, and you know it was very cute. And my gosh, they were cute in there. They had the cutest costumes ever, and they were just smart little kids, you know, who really picked up on not only singing but also doing a little dance with Rags the Beggar, who was, you know, the guy that I played. And I was standing. It was my job when my tour partner was on stage. It was my job to get them ready. So the curtain would close, you know, and they would all file out and then sit down, and they would be asleep in the pumpkin patch. They would all be a little asleep with their hands like this. So we're standing off stage, and it was someplace, I think it was in Plentywood, someplace like that. Anyway, we were standing off stage, and there's two little pumpkins standing in the wings there. And I was saying, you know, keep quiet, you know, everybody okay? Is everything going to be fine? And one of them was just completely chilled, just like totally laid back and totally, you know, like whatever kind of kid. And the kid standing next to him was just a wreck, just a nervous wreck. And I said to the calm little kid, I said, are you ready? And he said, yeah, I hope I remember my lines. And the little kid next to him, who was a nervous wreck, he went like this. He went, I hope I don't spit up blood.
Oh my God!
Adorable. I thought I was going to die.
What did you say?
I assured him that to my knowledge, nobody had ever died.
Yeah.
Doing that, you know. And then of course I learned years later that Moliere actually did die spitting up blood on stage, but that's a different story. But I didn't tell him that. Yeah. Right. That is. And the other one, same tour. This was back when video cameras were very rare. Yeah, you didn't see them. Yeah. At all, right? And we were in Coutts, Alberta, and Ron and Nancy Wallersheim, who are like the international hosts for tour actors everywhere. Right? They open their house to you. They welcome you in. They're like the perfect the perfect folks. They were at the time. They're probably long since stopped doing this. But Ron Wallersheim was the principal at the Coots School. And it was our last show of the year. It was like the dead of winter. It might have been Thanksgiving. You know, Deborah and I were going to like go home for Christmas and come back, you know, big show. And there's a patter song in Cinderella called the Beggar's Lament. And there's this little part of it that goes, my stomach aches for chocolate cakes, a little ham on rye, banana cakes for goodness sakes, a little pumpkin pie, my tummy aches for, you know, there's this, and there's really clever lyrics. I dream all day of hens that lay scrambled eggs and ham, banana, something toast, but a banana roast, boysenberry jam.
Oh, yeah.
Please, sir, I want a nickel. Anyway, there's this little patter section, right?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to make a kid do that. You're supposed to teach that to a kid, right? And I didn't have time to do that this particular week, so I took that solo. So I look out on you know, at the audience, and we're doing the little dancing, and I look out and I see this little red light of a video camera, and it just distracted me just that much, and I ended up singing and all of the beggars that were on stage with me were like looking over their shoulders, like I was just babbling. Really, honestly, I just could not get it together.
Oh my goodness.
To come through there, and there it was, you know, captured forever on the magic of videotape. And you know, it was pretty miserable. Yeah. Same tour. Yeah.
Well, you know, hopefully they thought it was part of the song.
Yeah. Well, I doubt it, but there you go. I live in fear of seeing myself, you know, at that age, you know, doing that, just messing up that badly, you know. And the kids looking at me like, are we supposed to do anything special that now you don't remember the lyrics to the song? You know, that kind of thing.
Good for you though, for continuing on.
Thank you. That's one thing that the tour actor directors realize after their tour of duty is that you can get through anything.
Yeah.
Not only you can do anything, nothing is impossible, but you can also get through anything. We were snowed in once in northern Montana, and we got the audition done. We cast the show. We did half of the first rehearsal that night, and we didn't call the kid. We weren't able to get the kids back because the school was closed. The entire town shut down. And we got the kids back on Saturday morning, and we still did the show Saturday night. And yeah, it's incredible the kind of training that you get, you know, if you pay attention. The scripts and the people and the kids, they really do teach you how to respond.
What advice do you have for young, well, any age performers or theater makers? What advice do you have for them?
You know, I'll say the same thing that I said earlier. You know, there is no theater in the world that's going to turn you away if you show up and say, I want to help.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I used to know this data, but I don't remember it anymore. But it's like for every one person who's performing on stage, there's like 6 people that are supporting them in some way, shape, or form. And every single one of those people contributes to that performance. And so my advice would be, you know, learn everything that you can. You know, immerse yourself. I think Jim Caron called me their unofficial very first intern, because I just hung around so much and did absolutely everything that I could to get the show up and running. And if that meant, choreographing, if that meant taking a group of kids into the lobby to teach them a song, if that meant playing the piano for an audition, I mean, I just did absolutely everything. TV interviews, designed posters. We got our very first computer when I was on staff there, and I used to back up the computer. I put all of the volunteers on a database and would kind of send them postcards. The volunteer list went from like 40 to about 400 in the amount of time that I was there. That we would get people to auditions, and we would get people to run backstage crew, and we would get people to run the Fryloft in the Wilma and places like that. You just have to have, God, this sounds corny, but I'm going to say it. You have to have an open heart, and you have to be just genuinely curious about art.
Yeah.
God, that sounds horrible.
No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And how lucky MCT is to have had you and continue to have you. And how lucky, as you said, that you talk to high schoolers and talk to people about theater and their goals. That is such an important thing for people to hear. So I'm grateful to hear it myself, and I'm grateful that other people get to hear it, and that the people watching this get to hear it, because that is very important.
Well, and I think just living in the times that we've lived through, frankly, it's really hard to do a show in front of a webcam. It's really hard to hold it together. It's really hard for a theater company to I was 2 weeks into a production of The Odd Couple when we were shut down. And the theater has managed to keep us all together, the entire cast together, sending us these emails that, the set is still on the stage. Our costumes are still hanging in the dressing room. My props are still, well, The Odd Couple, by the way, it's like a prop master's nightmare. There are so many props in that show. Anyway, all of our props are just kind of sitting on the prop table. My wristwatch, they kept showing me pictures of my little section of the dressing room. My wristwatch is there, my Kleenex is there, my it's really, and it was like 2 years ago, right? Yeah, it's like the entire theater world kind of hit pause. And it's just so exciting to be able to take what it is that we have learned these past 2 years into the theater, and persevere in an art form that is thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Right. It very, very easily could have languished and died, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, I think. And it's because it inspires people in a much deeper level than the webcam, and the recordings. And I just yesterday saw something. It was the West End. It was the first rehearsal back of a Lion King kind of table read for the Lion King. And I just sat there and wept. I mean, it was just so inspirational to think that things are going to start revving up again.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the future. I always have been.
Yeah. Well, that's very inspirational. There's something about being in the room together as theater makers and having the audience in the room that you don't get with the recordings and Zoom and all of that. That's
right.
So much of the magic of it is about watching it together, or being in it, or working on it together,
or hearing people laugh in a group. Yeah. It's just all kind of related to that shared experience that is really important.
Yeah.
My wife believes it. I believe it. The people that I work with believe it. The people that I am on stage with believe, and I've been very fortunate. I've worked with some really fabulous people in the theater. And they all come back to that, creating that experience, right? Even if Maida Kaplan, even if you lost your tour truck and called and said that the tour truck had been stolen when in actuality you had just forgotten where you parked it.
There you go.
So there it's out. The secret's out.
Well, the secret's out. The world knows.
Nobody stole our tour truck. We just forgot which parking lot it was in Billings, Montana.
Wow.
There it is.
You know what?
That's my
for admitting live on the air.
That's my MCT confession for you.
Oh, perfect. That's what I should add to the question list.
Yes, that's exactly right.
MCT confession. Thank you for the inspiration.
I'd like to hear some of those, frankly.
I know.
I would regularly tune in.
Perfect. Well, that'll be our next, maybe that needs the whole show. So that'll be our next venture. Oh, well, it is so great to talk to you. I am so appreciative of your time, your expertise, your MCT story. And I think it is so important for me to hear, and so important for our followers and the people that watch these to hear, more about where we came from and the people who made it happen.
Well, I'm honored to do it. I'm happy to do it. I wish I could do more. I drove by the Front Street Theater, which is now like a sporting goods store, and I drove by the new theater there just last week, and I was just I was quietly proud of the fact that I had an opportunity to contribute to the success of MCT, and I just I adore the idea of it, and I wish that I could give you all of the money that you gave me back over the years, because I don't think I really appreciated just exactly how fortunate I was at that point to make the $25 for accompanying the children's show, or to be on home staff. I mean, that was like a big deal.
Yeah.
Or to have a job as a tour actor, when you're 18, 19 years old, it just, I wish I could do more.
Yeah. Well, this is more than enough. And you sharing your story and giving advice and spreading the joy is more than enough and much appreciated.
Well, and you know what? I didn't spit up blood.
Touche. And you remembered all your words.
So there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate it. It's been lovely talking with you. Happy tea time.
Happy tea time.
Cheers.
Give my regards. Give my regards to everybody there. I used to have a friend who, I'll leave you with this. I used to have a friend who, there's a couple of awards programs here in Portland. One of them is the Drammy Awards. It's the drama critics. They get together and they kind of say, you're a good actor, or this was a great show, those kinds of things. You get a little statue. And he used to say, if you win, mention my name. And so every time I've won an acting award, I've mentioned his name. So, mention my name in the hallowed halls there of MCT. Say hello to everybody.